The Israeli army has reportedly sent more troops to a West Bank village where Jewish settlers have been trapped Palestinian families inside their homes. The Palestinians say the siege is aimed at forcibly displacing them from their land. Over the weekend, settlers set up a tent in the front yards of three homes in the village of Kusra, one of which is owned by a U.S. resident. They cut off water and electricity, and the United Nations says the 15 Palestinians inside are trapped in a state of terror. For more on this story, we can go across to correspondent Noga Tarnopolsky. Noga, good afternoon to you. What are the latest developments? I know things are changing rapidly on the ground.
Good afternoon, Delano. Yes, let's just review in recent weeks, we've seen really striking escalation of violent acts perpetrated by Israeli settlers, extremist settlers, kind of in marauding gangs going throughout the Palestinian-run areas of the West Bank, areas where there have not previously been Jewish settlements at all. And in some cases, trying to provoke violence with Palestinians. There's been a whole series of Fridays in recent weeks in which these gangs of settlers, armed, start marching towards Palestinian towns and villages in long rows, calling this a hike and trying to provoke violence, and in some cases, initiating violence. What we've seen, as you just mentioned, in the last 2 or 3 days is a different tactic for taking over Palestinian lands. And this involves literally squatting on private property, private homes owned by Palestinian citizens, about which there's simply no question, and slowly taking it over, cutting off electricity, cutting off water, blocking even the access of Israeli soldiers to the area. It has become as much a standoff between these settlers and the army as it is between these settlers and the besieged Palestinian citizens in their homes, including, in some cases, people who need urgent medical care, who need food. I mentioned the question of the Israeli army because the Israeli army right now does seem to be split, as difficult as that may be to believe. In other words, there are elements of the army that are attempting to resolve this violence by removing the settlers, including a brigade that was sent into the West Bank today. However, there are other elements of the army, especially local security committees who are allowed to wear army uniforms, who are actually shielding the settlers who are engaged in these acts. So it is a very complex situation. And today we saw this emerge in a remarkable, I would say, U-turn in which the local commander, the commander of the Israeli Central Command, gave an order to evacuate these Palestinians from their homes. And this was contradicted almost immediately by the chief of staff of the Israeli army, who said, no way, we're leaving them in their homes. This event is still underway as we speak, Delano.
Noga, what are some of the domestic and international ramifications to this siege underway in the West Bank?
Well, internationally, I have to say it really is blowing up. Today, we not only heard from the United States ambassador to Israel, who is a fervent supporter of the Israeli settlement project, who referred to these people as, I quote, Israeli settlers. And even more striking, I have to say, he said in the same statement that it is the United States that has sent IDF soldiers and border police, Israel police, to these areas to try and resolve the matter, implying that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government are no longer in charge. That's on one hand. We also heard from another very close friend of Israel, the former ambassador from Germany, Stefan Siebert, who says that some kind of sanctions should be established against Israel because of what's going on in the West Bank. Domestically, of course, this is a real break point. Prime Minister Netanyahu's most extremist ministers are demanding complete freedom of action for these extremist settlers, who they represent, so as to drum up support ahead of the elections. And for now, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is siding with them and not with the United States.
Noga, thank you very much for that. Noga Tarnopolsky reporting there.